Welcome to the $1 Million Workflow Podcast. Today, we are covering the metrics for paid social ads that took my agency from 0 to 7 figures and how it can work in your business. Buckle up. Hey, I'm Zach Herman. I built a 7-figure agency automated practice that helps practice owners grow their practice, and we've been doing that since 2018. We're going to break down the most important metrics to look at for your business or your practice, and these are essential for your business if you are running paid ads today. The very first metric that you're able to track when you start running paid ads, this is before anyone's clicking or converting or signing up or appointments or anything. This is the CPM, or the cost per 1,000 impressions. Now, what is impressions? This is the metric in which just your ad is being shown to a user. So that doesn't mean they've clicked or done anything with it. If it showed up in their feed, then that is an impression. Usually when you're running paid ads, you're getting hundreds or thousands of impressions per day, but you can understand that how many people are scrolling through social media and how many ads you see per day. Multiply that by everyone in your area or in that audience, you're getting hundreds or thousands. Hundreds or thousands may sound like a lot, but most people are skipping through and scrolling past your ads. And obviously the game of paid social ads is for them to not scroll past your ad. So just to drive it home, a lower CPM is what you're wanting to achieve here. That means your ad is being shown to your audience at a lower price. And then of course, the higher the CPM, that means your ad is more expensive. So the lower the CPM, the better. That means your ad is being shown for less money. And then of course, the higher the CPM may not be ideal. Sometimes you might be okay with that depending on your audience, and we'll get into that. A goal for CPMs, and honestly for all metrics, I will always have to say and preface that it varies. For an example of local health practice, your goal would be about a $10 CPM. That means for every $10 you spend, 1,000 people in your area are seeing that ad. So we have clients where their CPM is 2 to 3 times higher than that, and they're still getting a great return. So I'll tell you why that's okay and what factors increase the CPM. So the first is targeting specificity. So if you're taking a broad audience means the largest audience possible that makes sense for your ads. So if it's a local health practice, for this example, this would be everybody a certain mile radius around your practice without saying men or women or interest or filtering out certain zip codes. This would be anyone that's willing to drive to your practice, say twice a week. Now, what might increase that CPM is if you start filtering that audience a bit. And that's why I say it might be okay, because when you start to refine this audience, you might exclude certain low income zip codes. You might start targeting interests that relate to your advertisements. In a previous episode, we've talked about making sure to target those higher income interests that align with your practice. So this could be, I think we used the example of pickleball. So if you start to refine your audience, that's going to increase that CPM. But like I said, this might be okay because you're getting a refined audience that might have a higher chance of conversion. So you're willing to live with that. Some industries might just result in a higher CPM because it's just a more competitive industry, and competition will raise the CPM because you're essentially bidding against these competitors for that ad space. So if you think of a couple industries like legal and real estate, highly competitive, so your CPMs may rise because of that. Also, it's worth noting that these higher ticket customers in those industries will be responsible for that higher CPM as well. A big one is seasonality, and agencies like ours and others know this very well, because there's 2 big things that we think about. One that comes around every 4 years, that's elections. The other big one is Black Friday, holiday shopping, Q4. And although these industries or these ads may be completely irrelevant from what you're doing and they're not your competitors, you're still bidding for these ad slots that show every few posts. It doesn't matter what industry you're in these cases. These political campaigns for election season, they have astronomical budgets that are multitudes bigger than yours is. So when you're running ads during election season, you're guaranteed to see a higher CPM, and that results in a higher cost per blank, meaning every other metric that we're going to show here. So similarly to election season, we have, the Black Friday, the holiday season, and just like those big spenders are spending around election time, so are the big e-commerce brand, and every single medium and small size product company is running these holiday ads because that's when they make the most of their money. So in Q4, no matter what ads you're running, you're going to run into a higher cost, unfortunately. And then related to that are, actual seasons and holidays. And this is very dependent on whether this is good or bad for your company. So for example, if we stick with health practice and we're talking about holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, it's very common to see your CPMs rise. Speaking of seasons and holidays, there's some holidays that might not fare well for some businesses. If it's a local business, these people might be traveling or just not thinking about coming in. If it's a health practice, they might not be thinking about their health. But on the flip side of that, New Year's resolutions, those kind of things, Mother's Day, if this is a health spa, you might see a massive tick in sales and gift cards and so forth during Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, etc. So there are seasons in which this really can help your ads or not. Relating back to the CPM metric, if we're talking about a holiday like New Year's Eve and New Year's and sort of the week following, your CPMs may rise. But again, this may be beneficial because this is where you get a big increase in people wanting to come in and take care of their health. So some other factors that might change the CPM is your location. So if you're a local business and your location is in a higher end area, the individuals in there spend a little bit more money. So a lot of people are targeting them, therefore increasing competition, therefore increasing your CPMs. Another important one to know is the campaign's objective. So when you're running ads, you can run it for as little as reach, and reach simply just means show my ad. I don't care what happens, just show my ad. This is a big brand awareness play. But then you might want to do another metric like video views, and you're just saying, I just want my video watched as long as possible. So the ones that actually result in a higher CPM are going to be things like if your campaign is for leads, then you're asking Facebook, hey, show me the people that are likely to submit this form. Taking it further, your objective may be for appointments. So you're not only asking them to submit their information, but you're asking them to also schedule an appointment. You might be a more advanced user and you're asking Facebook to give you leads who actually convert. And so you might have set that up. We may cover these advanced custom conversions in another episode, but if you're having that, you may see a very massive shift increase in your CPMs. And then on the e-commerce side of things, your CPM is going to rise as you go up the normal, just getting your product viewed, getting people to add it to cart, getting people to go to the checkout, and then getting people to actually purchase and check out. So those are usually like the stages of e-commerce. So each one of those increasingly harder campaigns are going to be showing an increase in CPM as well. So typically the goal of your ad campaign is to get conversions. If you're just simply looking to lower your CPM, then you might want to do a lot of the things opposite of what we said in here. So that's not refining your audience, show it to the largest audience possible. That way you can get some of the low-hanging fruit, get a lower CPM, and plan ahead when you notice that these seasons are coming up that have the increasing CPMs. So maybe during those times you pause ads and you focus on like a referral campaign internally. Or if this season or time is beneficial to your business, then you might want to go and increase your ad spend and make specific tailored campaigns for that time. And then of course, if you do want to continue to get that CPM lower, then you might want to run your campaign for a more affordable goal. So instead of purchases, you may just want to do, views. So now we're finally talking about metrics in which people are taking action on your ad. And the very first one I want to talk about, which is one of the most important ones, is click-through rate. These are the people who are clicking on your ad. And I'll talk about, specifics of like what the click means when we talk about cost per click. But these are people who are clicking on the actual button or the link of your ad when they see it. So that means they saw your ad, it sparked their interest, they stopped scrolling, and they clicked the link. So oftentimes that's a very, very important metric for you. That it's one of the most important. Obviously, the most important is cost per acquisition, which we will talk about as the last metric. But this is one of the very first ways to find if your ad is quality, if it's relevant, if the offer is good. This is very key. So the reason this metric is so important is this is the people who find your ad interesting and want to learn more. There's so many things that could affect that. So the first would be the ad relevance. So people just thinking, oh, is this ad for me? There's a lot of tips we'll talk about on making sure the audience feels like it's relevant to them. So high quality or even just attention grabbing visuals, videos, graphics, etc. will at least stop the person from scrolling, and then that ad copy to drive it home. A lot of times actually a lot of the headlines are actually on the image or the video now, because that's where our eyes go first. So that is the most important thing, then the caption and the headline. And this is where targeting and filtering your audience is actually beneficial to this metric. So when you're filtering, your CPM may rise, but your click-through rate can actually be seen as pretty independent of the CPM. All right, let's create an example to drive this home. Let's say you're selling a women's San Diego Padre t-shirt. I'm in San Diego. We love the Padres here. But let's say you ran this ad and you targeted the entire world. The CPM is going to be very low because targeting a lot of these other countries is very affordable, but the likelihood of people clicking on that around the world is very low. So your click-through rate is going to be awful. Now, if you filter it to people in the United States, that's better. CPM will unfortunately rise, but the click-through rate will increase a little bit because people know who the Padres are. But then if you filter it to women, because it's a women's shirt, so CPM is going to rise, but the click-through rate is going to rise, which is good. And then obviously if you filter it to women in San Diego, maybe even age range that you might find that fits that shirt style best will increase the CPM, of course, because you're narrowing your audience, but the click-through rate will be even higher. And then you could increase it even higher by getting the interest of Padres. So you can see how there's sometimes no correlation, and you might not even care about the CPM, but you really just want to get that click-through rate. So the ad relevance in the copy and in the visuals for something like this, or even just a local business in San Diego, if you're saying, hey, San Diego moms, or hey, Padre moms, things like that, if you're calling them out and the visuals are all there, this is key for a high click-through rate and a higher ad relevance to the audience. Outside of this e-commerce example is your offer strength. So if you're a local business, if we're talking a health practice, for example, you want your offer to be strong. And these metrics will drive this point home that I have to make quite a bit. But there's this complete fallacy that if you're running a $49 offer for a new patient to come in versus a, let's say, $199 offer, there's this misconception that the higher priced offer is going to magically bring in this higher quality, bigger spending client. And that is simply not true. The way these platforms work is that there's not a human reviewing every single ad. So they don't know if this is a quality ad and if it's going to be relevant. So they rely on the engagement of the ad to show them if it's quality and relevant. So the only way for them to understand that your ad is great is if people are commenting, clicking, stopping and looking at it, at least sharing, not only clicking, going through and submitting their interest. So a lot of these actions taken on your ad are really what really help drive the ad to be seen more and to increase conversions and lower the cost per click, increase the click-through rate. So these are very important. So back to my example, if there's a lower barrier of entry offer on your ad, then more people are clicking it, more people are stopping or submitting their interest. Whereas, you may get a couple bites on the $199 new patient special, but really that's not super exciting to people unless they know that this is typically $1,000 for a visit and they're just very aware of that. But you really want to create a low barrier of entry. You don't want to make any money, honestly, on these new patient specials. I always like to use myself as an example here because I'm a advocate for, alternative medicine and so forth. And so if I'm seeing the two ads, both practices are beautiful. The ads look the same. What's included on the offer is the same. I'm going to go try out that $49 offer first and likely be their patient because it's just a low barrier of entry. I can afford both services likely at the end of the day, but it's just easier for me to grasp the lower cost offer. There's so many other factors to do to bring in the higher quality patient before you just think increasing the offer price is going to do that. It's actually going to, 9 times out of the 10, it will have a negative impact on your ads and your performance. So again, just creating a really relevant ad and a great offer, whatever that happens to be. Even if we go back to our e-commerce example, if this is a $1,000 t-shirt, it's not going to convert. People aren't going to click. The metrics are going to go the opposite way. But if this is a 50% off limited time deal, maybe there's some scarcity, limited time, that really helps with scarcity and people thinking that they should do this today. That really helps. And so offer price and so forth for local businesses is very important. When you're creating these headlines or even the bold text on the visuals, you really want to call out the audience. So for both examples, for the women's Padre t-shirt, you really want to show a woman wearing that t-shirt, and maybe the ad copy, you may want to call them out. So for example, in the new patient special, if this is a local practice in San Diego, you want to say, hey, San Diego residents, depending on what the service is, hey, San Diego residents in pain, hey, San Diego dads, San Diego pickleball players. Call out the audience that is relevant to you and that's relevant to the ad and the offer. And this will really, really help. One of the most important metrics, click-through rate. The next metric, before we get into the clicks and conversions and so forth, is the frequency. This metric may not be talked about as much, but frequency actually gives you a direct insight into what's called ad fatigue. And ad fatigue is when your ad is being shown too much to the same person and people are just tired of seeing this ad. And it may be time for you to start refreshing some of the creatives. So the frequency is the average number of times somebody in your area has seen this particular ad. So you can see this on the ad set, which is basically the area that holds all your creatives. And this could be the average of all your creatives. But then you can go down to the ad level and see specifically which ads have just been shown too many times. So if your frequency is at a 2, even a 3, you're probably still fine. So people have seen this ad 2 or 3 times. That may be okay. So when you see this frequency approaching 5, you may want to start designing these new creatives and getting ready, maybe swapping it out right away, depending on your business. And then obviously 6, 7 is definitely the time that you want to make sure that you jump in there and refresh these creatives and maybe create a lot. So images, videos, carousels, and a bunch of variations of those. The more variations you have, the less ad fatigue you're going to get. So a lot of times with frequency, it's sometimes just a confirmation metric. You'll probably feel that increasing through something else happening. So if we're talking about local lead generation, if we start to see that they were getting a great cost per lead and everything's running great, and then all of a sudden the amount of leads just start to dwindle, that's pretty much the main one that you'll see. You're thinking, man, I'm not getting as many leads every week as I used to. I wonder if we've just been running this ad for too long. And then you go in and you look at the frequency and it's a 6, and you realize, okay, people have seen this ad. Everyone in my area has seen it. They made their mind up that if they're going to click it or not click it. It's time that we run some new ads, maybe even a new offer or a new campaign or so forth. So a lot of the same things that affected the CPM are going to also affect frequency. So let's say you have an audience size of 20,000. That may sound like a lot, but if we're going back to CPMs, that's cost per 1,000. Meaning if your CPM is $20 and let's say you have a smaller budget and you're running an ad for $20 a day, you're showing that ad to 1,000 people per day. And so if your audience is something like 20,000, in 20 days, obviously the numbers don't line up this perfectly, but in 20 days, you've quote unquote reached your audience. Now there's a lot of overlap and a lot of things that change, so it's not going to be one-to-one like that, but just think about that in terms of that frequency rising pretty quickly. So if you want that frequency to stay at a low number, then, don't refine your audience too much and try to get the most broad audience possible. That way, they can show this ad to more people sporadically throughout the duration of your campaign. So the duration of the campaign is actually another obvious one that might increase that frequency. And so if you're running a campaign for 5 years, that frequency is probably going to be insanely high because people have seen this ad so many times. And then interestingly enough, the higher budget that you put in place will oftentimes result in a higher frequency. So if you think about it, even if you have this small audience, if you're running something really small, like $5 a day, you're going to spread out, how many people see this per day. And so you're going to be able to have a longer duration of this campaign and the frequency won't rise as much. But if you're, regardless of the audience size, let's say your audience size is even 1 million, if you're spending $100,000 a day, hypothetically, you're probably going to run through your audience pretty quickly. and that frequency is going to rise quicker. So again, campaign objective is also going to affect this too, because you're essentially narrowing your audience still. You're not just telling them, I want everyone to see this ad. You're saying, I want to show this to a subset of the audience that is more likely to do this thing, like fill out this form. There's a lot of people on these social networks that typically just don't do anything. And so the platform isn't going to show it to those people if you want them to purchase something or fill out a form. And then there's people who just fill out a lot of forms and submit to everything. And so they're going to see those ads. And so you're kind of shrinking your audience there, which will increase the frequency. We kind of already hit some of these points, but to make sure that the frequency doesn't rise quickly is to have a lot of creative and to refresh and rotate a lot of that ad creative. Again, when we say creative, that means the visuals, the images, the videos, the carousels, the ad copy. If you create a lot of variation and set up your campaigns correctly, then the platform is going to rotate through these depending on which ones are performing the best, and then you won't see that frequency rise as quickly. All right, so finally, the metrics that are actually showing you some action being taken on your ad. So besides somebody just viewing your ad and stopping on it and looking at it, if it's a video, that would count it as a video view. But besides just looking at it, clicking on the ad is one of the main actions that they'll take on this ad. So that's why we want to look at the cost per click. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is how much you're spending for every person that clicks on the ad. Now, the difference between the paid social ads and Google, this is important because first of all, Google is intent-based. So people are searching it. And if people are searching for your business and then clicking your ad, it's a more valuable click because the intent is there. Whereas social media marketing is interruption-based. These individuals are just scrolling on social media, trying to be entertained or pass time. So you're interrupting that flow with your advertisement. So that's the difference there. The reason I bring this up is with the paid social ads, you're just paying for these impressions for it being shown. With Google, you're typically paying for a cost per action or a cost per click. So you may have days with Google where you're not spending anything because no one's clicking, and you're only spending when somebody is clicking or taking some other action. So with that out of the way, when we're talking about cost per click on these paid social ads, you're already paying a certain budget per day. But if you get a certain amount of clicks, it's just the average that click happened to cost you. And getting a little specific here is if you're actually digging into your metrics right now, you may see two variations of cost per click. And actually the cost per click that everyone talks about and looks at, and the one that's most important, is the cost per link click. And so when people say cost per click, they 99% of the time mean cost per link click, because there's also cost per all clicks. And this is important because cost per all clicks is just any click on your ad. If you notice on a lot of ads, there's the description and then there's the read more link, and that counts as a all click. And just clicking the image or things like that counts as a click. So really we're looking at the cost per link click, which is if you have any links in your description, or more importantly, the button or the call to action, that is the important click that we care about. Touching on the Google side of things, real quick, the higher intent keywords are going to be more expensive. So like emergency plumber near me is going to be a higher intent keyword and an increasingly competitive keyword. So that is going to increase that cost per click. And of course, the industry as well. So if you're doing attorney near me, then that's going to be a much higher cost per click. But back on the paid social side of things, a lot of the variables that affect the previous metrics that we talked about are going to also affect cost per click, because the CPM affects everything down the line. So a lot of the same things that we're talking about with the more refined audience, the location, and all those other things are going to result in a higher cost per click, just because it's more costly to even just show your ad. So a lot of those things that affected the CPM just showing your ad will also affect the cost per click, because that's just, if it's more expensive to show your ad, then the cost per click is going to rise as well. Again, you may be okay with that, but a lot of those same factors that increase the CPM are going to increase your cost per click, like industry or competition, your geographic location, seasonality, your audience targeting, and campaign objectives. One of the biggest things affecting the cost per click is what we just talked about with the click-through rate. Those things like the offer itself, the relevance of that offer to the audience, these are very important for the cost per click, because if the ad platform sees your click-through rate going down, they realize that this ad isn't that great, there's not a lot of relevance, so it's going to increase all those other numbers. The CPM is going to rise because they don't want to show poorly rated ads on their platform, and then that's going to increase the cost per click. So a lot of these metrics correlate to each other quite a bit. Some more advanced things that might affect this cost per click are things like bidding strategy. So you can actually adjust your bidding strategy and your, how much you actually want to pay per the result. And so depending on how you adjust that, if you're willing to pay for a higher click or conversion, then that cost may rise, but that may be a higher quality lead for you. So that may be okay. On the other hand, if you do it right, that could lower your cost per click, and then using the automatic bidding strategy, which 99% of the people are using when they're running ads, may actually result in a higher cost per click. So you may want to dig into what ad bidding strategies work for your industry. So where your ad is shown, of course, go into the platform specific. Google is going to cost more per click, but the intent is there and that might be okay for you. And then depending on where you're showing your ad. So let's talk about the social platforms. On Facebook, there's this right sidebar where you can show your ad. That's super cheap because a lot of people don't look over there. But then showing your ad in the feed is a little bit more expensive. Showing your ad in the feed on mobile devices is even more expensive because that's where most of their traffic comes from. So a lot of those placements, like in the reels of Facebook and Instagram, are going to have a different cost and may affect your cost per click. So my biggest recommendation for getting a lower cost per click is really focusing on the things we talked about in the click-through rate. And offer and relevance are going to be very, very key in getting this cost per click lower, which means a lower cost per conversion, which we'll jump into. This last metric is cost per acquisition. And this metric's a little tough because everyone's going to define this differently. And there's so many other factors besides the ads that go into it. So everything we learned about the previous metrics are going to be very important for your cost per acquisition. But we're just going to touch on this real quick because for those two examples we used previously for the t-shirt, cost per acquisition is somebody likely purchasing that t-shirt. But even for this business, maybe there's actually the real thing that their goal is getting them on like a bundle or upselling them to the premium jersey or whatnot for that sports team. But typically that cost per acquisition, cost per purchase for this example, for the shirt is what they're really geared for. And then for the health practice example, cost per lead is great, but we're jumping straight ahead to acquisition because there's this negative connotation for leads because leads may just be people who submitted the form and then maybe you never hear from them again. We talk about how to convert them after they become a lead. And some of the content we're putting out. But when we jump forward to cost per conversion for this health practice example, it may not just be that they submit their information. It may be that they grabbed an appointment, but likely it's that they show up to the appointment. That may be their conversion. Even further past that, for a lot of health practices, they're doing these care plans. And so the cost per acquisition for them, a patient to them is actually somebody who's signed up for a care plan or a monthly plan or a package. When we're talking things like red light, what's popular is like a 10 session package or a monthly recurring subscription. So these are usually the acquisition, and then you're doing your cost per acquisition. It's the cost per that action, which is like most of these metrics. But so for this example, if you spent at this point for the first person that finally signed on, if you've spent $500 in ad spend, that first conversion was a $500 cost per acquisition. And then as you get going, improve a lot of those other metrics, then your cost per acquisition will lower, and that's great. But then there's a lot of things internally, which is, for this example, how good is the front desk at getting these patients to schedule? And not only schedule, how good are they at getting them excited to come in? Because scheduling isn't enough. How good are they at, when they come in, making them feel welcome? How good is the practice owner or whoever's doing the treatment? How good are they at making them really feel like this is for them? How good are they at presenting the care plan and giving them options and payment plans? And how good is the care plan itself? So there's so many factors that go into cost per acquisition that you really want to focus on a lot of those other metrics and then focus on a lot of these internal things for your business that help massively too. So we talked about so many metrics from the very first, which is the CPM, the cost per just showing your ad, and then the cost per people taking action on your ad, the percent of those people that are actually clicking through, and then of course cost per lead, which we kind of grouped into cost per acquisition. These are all very important metrics, and it all starts with just creating a great, relevant ad with, if it's applicable, a great offer that makes sense for the audience. I hope you enjoyed this episode of $1 Million Workflow. If you'd like to hear more, I urge you to subscribe. If you're looking at the video now, this is my social counter at the time of shooting this. Once you subscribe, this thing goes up a tick, and I would really love for you to be the next number that helps me out here. So appreciate it. Like, subscribe. We're available on YouTube, Apple, and all the podcast platforms that you're interested in. And follow along, and we'll see you on the next one.